How are you lads? Welcome to Limerick City. I am here outside the Treaty City Brewery. Treaty City is a bit of a nickname for Limerick, just FYI. We're going to go in, we're going to chat to Steve, the owner, see how they got the whole thing started. We're going to try the Sarsfield Stout. I've heard a lot of good things. Let's go in and check it out.
Yeah, so that kind of kicked off. I'm an engineer by trade. I trained in LIT and I went from there to UL. My first job was in Portland in Oregon. My first job was in Intel in Dublin, but after 12 months they sent me to Portland, Oregon as part of Intel. And they sent us over and it was on a seed engineer. So when I landed in Portland, I landed between, with the place I was staying, the apartment I was staying was down the road from it was the Shoots, and then up the road from it was Rogue Brewery, which are two of the biggest craft breweries. They pretty much instigated it on the west coast of the States, which is where the new wave of craft brewing is coming from, or was then anyway. So I was kind of thrown into the battlefield, right? You were right into the trenches in the middle of this. My local beer in the off license was Mere Pond, which for the last 30 years running has been voted one of the top 5 pale ales in the world, in North America anyway, in the US. So it was, I went from
away from it.
Yeah, exactly. I was starting at I was coming from, college days of drinking whatever I could get my hands on to we were right into it. And then we when I came home, then I always had an interest in I was always making cheese and making sausages and doing stuff. We moved to Vancouver in Canada, which was supposed to be like a 6-month kind of thing. And then 6.5 years later, I'm cycling around van with skinny jeans and long hair and a fixie, right? I was as hipster as you can get.
Right.
And then my wife, Tressa, we had our 1-year-old at that time, and over in Canada, and she said, "Listen, we're moving home. Like, we'd love to have you. If you'd like to come with us, you know, if you want to stay here and do that Tiernan and Oak stuff, you're done, right?" But she said, come home. So the deal we did was, if we come home, I was allowed, or I was able to open a craft brewery. And so Treaty City was born.
And that was what year?
So we came home in 2012, and we started around 2014. So we started as a contract brewer, or a gypsy brewer is the term in the industry. So we took our ingredients and our kind of our know-how and our recipes, and we went to a third party, because as you can imagine, it's quite expensive to set up.
Yeah, I'd imagine. And that's out the road.
When we first started brewing, we were brewing in Ballyvourney in North Cork, right? So for about a year and a half, right? Yeah. And then in 2016, roughly, there isn't massive margin in that contract brewing, right? But it was really to just get the brand out there and see, is there an appetite for what we do, right? And then we went from there then to our own brewery above on Childers Road, which is our large batch manufacturing facility. So for want of a better word, large batch. It's about 4,000 litres per brew and a rough capacity of 15 to 20,000 litres per month. Depending on the month and what we're doing and what we're brewing,
And then this place.
So this was born, this is Nicholas Street, so 2425 Nicholas Street, and this was born in 2019.
And what was this before?
So the building was actually derelict, and it was a kind of it is owned by the council, and we took it on a long-term lease. So there was no floors, there was no windows, there was a bit of a roof, I would say, somewhat of a roof, and we kind of nursed it back over a 5 to 6 month period from November 2018 into about April, May 2019. And then opened. Now I would say we were definitely not ready to open when we opened. We had the kit, so we brought the brewery in Norway in August in 2019. So I'm lucky enough that I'm an engineer by trade, but my father is a fitter welder.
Right.
So there's a kind of a pro brewers a thing that it's kind of like Dundee for breweries, right? For want of a better word. So I saw this brewery in Faya, in an island in just about an hour north of the Arctic Circle. It's like in the middle of nowhere, quite literally, like a plane, a train, and a boat, right? And we bought the brewery, we uninstalled it, we packed it into a container ship that we had sent over from the lads out in Bird Hill here, and we reinstalled it back here. Yeah.
And how did you find it? You
On a website. So it was actually a very interesting story. So like Faya is a mile off the coast of Faya is the biggest oil refinery in Europe, and a mile to the other side is the biggest gas refinery in Europe. So it's oil money, right? So it's Norway oil money, right? And they had bought the brewery. I think it was just plain money, right? They just said, "What are we going to do? We have some money. What do you want to put up? Let's just put a brewery, right?" And they brewed some beer. I think there was 5 brews on it. But it was for the quality of the kit, for the size. It was the Rolls Royce of breweries, right? It was a 400 litre kit with about 2,500 litre capacity, but per month. But it was steam. So generally you would get different types, but to get that in a steam brewery is quite expensive, right? So steam is a very good medium to brew with. It's a cleaner medium, and it's also it boils hard, right? So it's easier to control your temperature. It's quicker to get up to temperature, so quite efficient, and quite good for brewing beer. I'll put it that way to you.
But more expensive.
But more expensive to set up. So yeah, we uninstalled that brewery there over 3 days. I won't tell the full story. That was a bit of a mad one. We got
that just blows my mind though. I would just assume. You went online, you ordered this, or you went to a big warehouse, you said, I'll have this, that, and that.
Yeah.
You actually saw this exact setup and said, I'm going to pack that up.
Yeah.
From fucking Norway.
Yeah.
You obviously knew what you wanted.
There was 2 brewers, the 2 brewers, Gustavo and Gabe at the time, he's now moved on, was with us, my father and me, and a bag of spanners that we bought in the middle section in Aldi, right? Because we knew we would leave the stuff there, right? So just to bring it with us, so we would leave it, right? And we ended up actually bringing them home, but you believe they're still downstairs. But so you could do that. Everything that we do in Treaty City is artisan, is small batch, is done with our hands, right? If you look around the building you're in, this building, like centuries old, right? You're in the medieval quarter in town here, where the street you just came down is first paved in like 1152, I think it is. So we're an old school artisan area of the world, right? And we believe firmly in doing it with our hands and the craft of doing everything. If you look at the tables we have, if you look at the paint on the walls, so we want to kind of bring out that old school kind of authenticity and stuff like that, and it's done with our hands.
Like
craft.
You said like you obviously have to put a roof on it and floors and stuff like that, but it's very much like kind of 50% being kept completely raw. Talk to me about the stout. Is it a case of like, you have a brewery and you just think, well, we have to have a stout? Or is it like, because Guinness, Beamish, Murphy's is so popular, we have to have a stout? Or what's the sort of thought process?
Yeah, so it was born during the pandemic, right? And the thing about stout is the nitrogenation, right? So to get nitrogen into the stout, it makes it creamy and that smooth white head, right? And so my father actually built the machine via a design that I got off a friend of mine, Gordon, and he built the machine for nitrogenating the stout. And over the pandemic, we needed a project. So we wanted to have a stout on the counter. And we started over, I'd say maybe 15 or 20 batches, different styles, different types of stout, to see where we wanted. Now we knew what we wanted, the parameters for it. So it had to be a dry Irish stout, which is traditional on the island of Ireland. And we wanted to be creamy, super smooth, a bit of coffee, a bit of chocolate, that kind of traditional style. We knew a couple of the raw ingredients that we wanted to use, the barleys and stuff we had. And then we wanted it to be a kind of a cornerstone for what we do, right? And so if you look at like North Cork and South Cork have Murphy's and Beamish, the capital has Guinness, and there's a bit of pride in it in saying, okay, well, why wouldn't Limerick, the 3rd biggest city in the Republic, have their own stout? You know what I mean? And it's something, for Limerick, no, I'm not to go too much into it, right? But it's important to us. Legacy is very important, and that authenticity of where we are from and who we are is in that beer. You know what I mean? So it's very much that kind of follow up to, we can do the avant-garde beers, we can do the New England IPAs and the different kind of stuff, and the sours and all this kind of stuff. But here's a traditional Irish stout or beer that we have been producing in this area of the world for 10,000 years. Why can't we do it? You know what I mean? So that's where that was the kind of the genome for it, if you will.
Yeah, brilliant. a lot of other breweries I've been in said, look, we just want to have a basic stout option that doesn't taste too crazy. They probably have a few different mad tasting stouts that are really maybe high percentage or really strong on the coffee, really strong on the chocolate, or very roasted and stuff like that. But a lot of kind of craft breweries have probably copped on to the fact that if they want to, and especially ones like this where they're trying to get people to come in and have a drink, they probably need a basic enough, smooth, creamy stout like this to get people in the door and stay in the door. And then maybe then, after they kind of get acquainted, they're like, okay, this isn't too bad, then they might try some other stuff. But no, this is just, like, it's usually a craft stout to me is very much too strong in this area or that area. This is just very drinkable, very smooth and very creamy. Right lads, now we're going to go downstairs into the belly of the beast to see where the beer is actually brewed. Just want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of the video, my good friends over at Manscaped. You've heard me say it before and I'll say it again, these videos unfortunately cannot be done for free. We got to drive down here, you got the diesel, we got to stay over in Limerick because we're having a couple of pints. Sob story over. Thank you very much to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. No need to look any further than manscaped.com for your below the waist grooming. I always recommend the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. You've got the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. This thing is absolutely incredible. You've got the advanced skin safe technology. Then of course you've got the one and only Weed Whacker 2.0, which gets in those hard to reach areas, up the nose, in the ears. This performance package also comes with the essential aftercare products. All well and good shaving yourself willy-nilly, excuse the pun, but you need the aftercare to really solidify the job. It all comes in a very handy travel bag, aka the shed. They even throw in a free pair of boxers. You're absolutely laughing. Go to manscaped.com, use my code PINTS20 to get 20% off plus free delivery. Sláinte. Cheers.
Sláinte.
Thanks very much.
Oh, yeah.
Split the S.
I suppose, yeah. Seems to have worked.
Steve was giving me the general idea about the stout of, I guess, why they wanted to, because I do a lot of stuff obviously around stout and Guinness and all that.
Yeah.
And I often wonder, do breweries just think, well, we have to have a stout? Or is it like, we want to have a stout or whatever like that? And he kind of told me about the different ideas and that they just wanted it to, you know, have all the way like the smooth and creamy and stuff like that. Not to get too technical, because my terminology is terrible. But I suppose, how does the process start? Do you just go through a billion different options, or do you know exactly what you're going to put in it?
You kind of know when you pick a style, especially stout, you're like, okay, I know that I'm going to need to have, like for the color, you are going to use like 10% of the grains that you're going to use are going to be like black grains.
Right.
That's enough to bring that color. If you start to go into 15 and 20%, it would taste like tar. It wouldn't be nice, you know?
Okay.
And it wouldn't really ferment, so it wouldn't turn alcoholic.
So the difference between 10 and 15, like it's all
10 and 15 and 20, it'll be huge, like.
Right.
So you kind of know, you're like, okay, that's the ballpark of what we need.
Yeah.
And then, you kind of trial and error. You do various little bits. You try with different amounts of unmalted barley or black barley as well, just to get those different textures and tastes.
And just, like, is it literally like, you know, putting a drop of something, tasting it like as a chef would do, or do you have to make a whole batch and then go, we fucked that up?
That's what this kit is for. This is the fuck up kit.
Okay, this is the small kit.
This is the small
which is
kit.
hard to believe. Like you think this would do thousands of people, but it's like there's a place down the road that's doing the real work.
Yeah, this is like 500 liters per batch. Maybe we try and push a little bit more.
Yeah.
Whereas in Childers Road, we're like 3,000 liters per batch ish.
So you do have to make like a full one of these. You can't do it. You can't make.
Well, we have a secret. We call it our homebrew kit because it's 50 liters.
Okay.
But that's for something that we really don't know if it's going to work.
Still, though, 50 liters or something that could be horrendous.
50 liters, yeah. We'll drink it if nobody else will.
You get the lads in after you close.
This is it, yeah.
And so then what's it? You're doing the, I guess, just you're kind of testing it out, and then. Is there a kind of an aha moment where you're like, that's...
Yeah, so for Sarsfield, what we were doing is every single batch we would set aside a certain day of the week where all of the production team and as many of the rest of us that we can get all sit down with like a grading sheet and evaluate aroma, appearance, the stick on the glass.
It's the only way to do it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like individual opinions. You're not all going to think the exact same thing. Like.
Yeah, exactly. And then you kind of aggregate the score, and then there's some time where you're like, okay, that's it. And you look back and you look at everything that might have worked with something. Maybe you were 1 or 2 degrees higher or lower here, and that's going to be the thing that you always do then.
Yeah.
Like when you're brewing, if you make a mistake, you have to write it down, because you might think it's a mistake, but then when you drink the beer, that's what made it the best batch ever. So you have to make that same mistake again and again and again.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So you're like, I put in 21% of something instead of 20%.
Yeah.
And you go, bollocks, but I'll write it down.
I have to write it down.
I have to write it down.
And then you're like, okay, that's the best beer we've ever made.
Yeah.
We have to make that same mistake every single time. And then it's not a mistake, it's the recipe.
Yeah. That's unbelievable. And so how long would you say from being told, right, we want to make a stout, to coming up with the finished product? Like, are you talking years? Are you talking a week? What is it like?
For at least as long as how long it is to make a batch. So from recipe formation to drinking it. For a stout, it'll be like a month or something.
Okay.
So for that whole time, you're not really going to know.
Yeah.
And then when you taste it, you're like, all right, we're there. There's various points of control. Like you can taste it and smell it every day. You're always measuring like the pH, not to get too scientific, but like the density and all these different things. You're tracking the temperature of it all during the fermentation, so you know roughly, okay, I think this is working.
Okay.
And then you start to get excited.
It's a month before you can taste it, and then it's another month before you want to change something a tiny little bit. It's another month before you can taste the finished product.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
And it's hard to do those side-by-side tests, I guess.
Yeah.
But
because it's been a month since you tasted it last.
Yeah, the other batch is kind of leaving when the other batch is coming on.
Yeah.
So really, that's how what you're aiming for always when you're making the same product is consistency.
Yeah. And would you say again, you're the brewer, my knowledge is just, I like simple pints, like nothing too complicated. Would you say this is a simple enough stout? It's not like it's not super harsh on any of the flavors or aromas. I would say it's very drinkable, and I think breweries like this need a stout like this, because stout is so popular. They need people to come in the door and go, do you know the skeptics who I would have been one of, to kind of go, oh, sure, I'll try this stout, and then they go, that's normal enough. Like, to really basic.
A lot of my family, my cousins especially, are the same. They're like, what are you doing with these peach sours and mango IPAs and whatever? And I'm like, no, we have. Like, you don't want craft beer to be intimidating for someone to come in.
Yeah.
You want everyone to come in.
Yeah.
You can have a pint of this with your dad, and he's not going to be whinging. We hope.
Yeah. He'll be whinging until he tastes it. He goes, right, that's all right.
He's like, it's all right. It's good enough tack, I suppose. So you do need those, like, I'd call it like a classic dryer stout, like a traditional one. It's not like you see sometimes craft brewers go a bit mad and they make like peanut butter chocolate stouts. Or even we did for St. Patrick's Day, we made a seaweed stout, which everyone was afraid of. And it sold in 6 days. Usually a batch of that would last us for 6 weeks. Fair enough. People just drank it, including me. But we had on as well Sarsfield for people who are like, look, I'm just here to chat. I'm not here to be like, beer experience. Even though you kind of are, like, every pint is a good experience.
And lastly, what's the easiest thing to, maybe the mistakes you've made over the years, or you see other brewers or whatever, but what's like the most common mistake if you were making a stout, that like too much of, or too little of?
Foam, the head on the top.
Right.
That's something that we really had to work really hard to get right.
How do you control that? Like,
before you keg it, it's the nitrogen. You're with a stopwatch. You're with a ruler to make sure it lasts for as long as it should. It's hard. It's really, really hard.
And like, you're talking, you're measuring the foam. You're actually nearly imagining this is one big pint. And you're like, right, if it's this size, it's got to be this size on a pint.
But that's it. You're pulling pints out of this, and you're measuring it like that. It's really, really hard. Still, it takes a lot of effort from us to get it right, because that's the first thing everyone sees does my pint look normal? And if it's not,
Especially these days, gobshites like me go around taking Instagram pictures and all. Like I could put up a picture and it could be the most delicious pint ever, but if the head is this size, they'll be like, that looks horrendous.
the Stout police are there being like, I can tell from
Yeah.
the background that this is not the right size.
Literally, yeah.
It's kind of, but it is, it's a very visual thing, like, and you drink with your eyes before anything else, so you can tell if someone's kind of fucked it up a small bit.
But no, genuinely, like I've had it here before, but it's just so drinkable, very smooth, very creamy, and like I said, not too extreme in any sort of flavour. So if you get plenty of them down, you not a
I'll
bother.
take that.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers. That was brilliant. You're a natural.
Oh, thank you very much. As are you.